What is up, guys? Iconic here, and today we have a pretty simple but very useful tutorial on how to make a tonal future bass snare. Now, this is a sound that is widely used in future bass nowadays, and at first I thought that it was a sample that a lot of these producers were using, but it turns out it's a kind of sound design aspect that they're using by combining three different sounds, one being a type of transient snare, one being a clap, and one being whatever tonal sound you choose. I've heard wood blocks being used, I've heard metal stabs, I've used glass shattering or glass breaking used, but I'm going to show you a couple types of ways to make these snares, and it's actually pretty simple, and I'm sure a lot of you have the samples already in sample packs that you own. But if you don't fret, because I will be including this whole project and all the samples used in the description of this video, so make sure to check that out. Now, as I just mentioned, it's made of three sounds, and you can see I already set some things up here. This is because this is my second time recording this video. The first time I had some audio card problems and it wasn't recording properly, but now that I got that straightened out, everything's fine. So the only thing you missed is me looking for these samples and adding them, but don't worry, because I'm still going to be explaining my thought process on why I chose these samples. And then before I even recorded, I made this basic future bass pattern that's just going to loop. I'll play that before we get into it first, so without further ado, let's get into it. It's a very simple future bass pattern, and that's not really the focus of the tutorial. I can make a more in-depth future bass tutorial in the future, but this one's going to be on the tonal snare, as I mentioned. So the first sound that I added was a very tight transient snare, just like that. If you want to preview your sounds, you can hold Control and you can left click on that. So that is the first sound that I used. It's a very tight transient snare. You can go and find these in hip-hop sample packs, maybe some house, but generally hip-hop has these types of like 808 snares. And next you want a looser type clap, one that's a little bit wider than the snare, one that kind of fills in the spaces where the snare doesn't, I should say. And that is the type of clap that I used. It's a lot wider, it's a little bit brighter, and it kind of fills out other areas that this snare does not. And for the tonal aspects of this, I have a woodblock sound, which I actually still think, has some reverb on there from the previous video. So I'll take that reverb off for now. And then I have a metal sound right here. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways how to make these snares. So I put this on 2 and 4, so if I put the snare here, you'll hear. It's just a very simple snare pattern. I'm going to first add these snares and claps, like I mentioned, to kind of have the nice tight transient snare to be the foundation of your snare. And then you have a clap to kind of make it wider and spread it out slightly. And then for this first one, I'm going to add the wood block. I'm going to add the metal sound later, but to start, I'm going to use just this wood block right here. And so if you play these without any mixing or any processing, this is what it sounds like. So it sounds alright. You can definitely tell the snare and the clap overpower the woodblock sound. So I'm going to get into some processing for the time being to kind of teach you how to make it sound a little bit better. First, I want the clap to be a little bit less in volume. I want the wood block to be a little bit more pronounced, and maybe we can turn the snare a little bit and we'll give that a listen. So now the wood block kind of sticks out a little bit more. Now on the very last effects slot on this wood block, I'm going to add a sound good Iser. A lot of people don't agree with this, but in my opinion, I like it just for kind of a short, simple beefing up of the sound slightly. I don't throw this on everything, but in a pinch like this, it works pretty well. Anything in moderation is okay. Obviously, just like with compression or just like with reverb, you can use way too much pretty easily. So if you just back it off a little bit and use it sparingly, Sound Good Iser is a good tool to help you kind of bring out some of the harmonic content in that sound. So now what I'm going to do on the first slot of this tonal is I'm going to put a low cut or a high pass filter on there. And I already know from the first time I did this video that the tone of, or this chord progression is in F minor, and the fundamental frequency of F is around 350 hertz. So there isn't much harmonic content in this sound in particular, but if I bump up around 350, it might give it a little bit more sound in the tone of the key. So as you can see, there's not much harmonic content there, but it doesn't really hurt too much just to bump it up and accentuate whatever sounds are in key there. So that's not a super necessary step, but that's something that I generally like to do. If I know it's around a certain frequency, I might bump that slightly up, just kind of accentuate some of the harmonics in that area. Now, next thing I'm going to do on the clap is you can also play with the stereo separation a little bit. Generally, your drums might want to stay mono, but if you want your clap to be a little bit wider, you can turn that to the left a little bit to increase the stereo separation. Not too much, though, because you don't want your clap to be too wide, but that's just something to kind of make it fit kind of more well together and make it sound as one. Now, processing for this clap, I'm going to add an EQ, do the same thing. I'm going to low cut it. And then I might make it slightly brighter by boosting some of the higher frequencies here. So it makes it sound slightly brighter. And I might do the same thing with the snare. Do a high pass filter. Maybe accentuate the same type of tone there around 350. And just in case, because I didn't mention this before, if you want to know around what pitch your song is in, so like here I have one of the chords, and I can go over here to an EQ, and you can see the fundamental of F. Of course, it's jumping around a little bit, but it's sitting right there around 350 hertz. So if you want to know what frequency your key is in, you can kind of use that to get a general gist of it. So now that that's done, let's hear what that sounds like. So it sounds pretty good right now. So now the next step I can do is what I had before, add a little bit of reverb to there to kind of drag out the tail a little bit more and make it a little bit smoother. That sounds pretty good. So now what I can do is I can swap out this wood block for the metal sound and do the same type of thing. Now I can do the same type of thing for this high pass and then accentuate around 350. Again, these are just mere suggestions. I don't always do this, but they're just kind of some things that could help in your mix if you want to accentuate that tone in your song. If you feel entitled to, maybe make it slightly brighter by increasing some of the higher frequencies. I don't know if I want to do that too much for this sound in particular, just because I already have the clap that's boosted as well as the snare, so you don't want it to be too bright. That sounds pretty good. I might bring that volume down slightly. So now that those sounds are pretty much done, what I can do to kind of beef up the sound and give the snare a little bit more body is add parallel compression, and that's basically just a wet-dry mix of compression, so you kind of get some of the sonic characteristics of compression without actually compressing the raw signal. So in order to do that, I'm going to get all of these, and I already have some of these routed to this channel, but all you do to this to get parallel compression is you'll get whatever channel you want to be compressed, and you'll click this little arrow here on the channel that you want to be your P-comp channel. And so I'm going to name this P-comp, and I actually might even color this red to make it stick out. So now I have a parallel compression channel, and so if you missed that, because these were already routed from the prior video that had the audio problems, basically now these 4 channels are being routed both to this P-comp channel, and they're being routed to the master channel. So I'm going to turn this volume down, and if I press play, you can still hear everything because they're being sent to this master, but if I raise this volume up, It'll be duplicated and it'll be sent to this PCAP channel, then out to the master, and then it'll also be sent straight to the master. What I can do on this channel now is add a fruity limiter. Usually when people do parallel compression, they like to use a compressor called the 1176, and that's just a model made by multiple compressor manufacturers. And what people like about 1176 is that it's an FET compressor, which is a field effect transistor. I'm not going to go too much into that right now, but you can look up field effect transistors. But basically, people like them because they're super fast attack, and they respond really well for parallel compression. And people like them for drums because they have kind of a gritty type sound. Obviously, it's not too gritty, but when people use what's called British mode on these compressors, at least I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, they will push in all 4 ratios, because on this compressor it has 4 stock ratios. I believe they are 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, and then 20-to-1. So if you push in all 4 of those ratios, it's known as what's called British mode, and it's kind of like a brick wall limiter, and they'll basically squash the dynamics of it and make it sound kind of a punky garage type sound. It's very gritty. It makes it sound very big and full, and it's used very popularly in rock music, and that's generally what people do for parallel compression. Obviously, you can use any type of compressor you want, so I'm just going to use this limiter here real quick, and with the volume down, you can still see the signal going through. I'm going to add a little bit of gain, bring down the threshold a little bit, and then turn up the ratio. You want a kind of a high ratio to kind of squash it, but you don't want to destroy the dynamics. So I'll do a 6-to-1 ratio. So you can see it's kind of squashing the signal right there. And what I can do now is maybe add a EQ and make it slightly brighter, just so the P comp adds a little bit more higher harmonics there. And you can also add a little bit of distortion, maybe some blood overdrive, add some preamp, some color. And obviously I'm not spending too much time on this, and these are just mere suggestions. I wouldn't necessarily always do this to my tracks. But now that you have a P-comp with effects on it, you can start to bring up this volume here and kind of blend it in with the dry signal, and it kind of fills it out and gives it a little more body and kind of gives a little more punch to your drums. So you can kind of hear the difference with and without the P-comp. That's just another technique that a lot of producers use to kind of beef up their sounds, more particularly with their drums. You can do this to just the kick, or you can apply this to a whole drum kit, or just your snare like I did. But it's just another technique that they use. Even if you want, you can layer in the wood block with this metal sound and see what it sounds like. So that's pretty much it. It sounds pretty good. I hope you guys learned something. Remember, if you need any of these samples, or if you want to check out any of the processing that I did in this project, you can look in the description. I'll include a download link with everything. And I hope this helped. Comment if you want a fuller future-based tutorial. I know some of you may want some explanation on what I did with the chords and whatnot, but the focus of this tutorial was just how to do this snare. But I hope you learned something. I hope it helped, and I hope you guys make some pretty awesome snares in your future bass tracks. But as always, this has been an Iconic production. Thanks for watching.
the night.